In the summer of 1932, in the town of Natchez, Mississippi, a woman named Jenny Merrill was murdered in her home. It was an attempted robbery gone wrong. Jenny was a descendant of the planter aristocracy of Natchez, and she was also the daughter of a U.S. ambassador to Belgium. The people originally arrested for her murder were her neighbors, Dick Dana and Octavia Dockery, who were also descendants of the planter class, but who had fallen on very hard times. They lived in a crumbled down antebellum mansion with their goats, dogs, cats, and chickens. This mode of living gave the home that they lived in the nickname Goat Castle. As neighbors, these two parties had feuded from the very beginning. Most often, it was about trespassing animals, and the sheriff was often called to resolve disputes. After the murder, the sheriff assumed that Dick and Octavia were involved, and they were arrested for murder. Several days later, their fingerprints were found inside Jenny's home, and they were officially charged with murder. The news of the murder became an international sensation, along with pictures of Dick and Octavia. Newspapers from all around the country picked up on the story and the images. 10 days after the murder charge, they are released to go home on their own recognizance. The person who actually is put on trial and goes to jail is Emily Burns, an African-American descendant of slaves who works as a laundress. Now enter George Pearls, aka Lawrence Williams or Pinckney Williams. He was also originally from Natchez, but left the South as part of the Great Migration to the North. He went north looking for work and found work in Chicago, but because of the Depression, was let go. He returned to Natchez to be around family and friends and people who he had worked for before to see if he could find any other work. There, back in Natchez, he ends up renting a room from Emily, and this is how the two meet. He visited with people he had worked for before and then stumbled upon Glenwood Estate, where Goat Castle is located. And he quickly learned that there was no work there because Dick Dana and Octavia Dockery have no money. This is where the details get a little bit sketchy, but according to the research of the author Karen Cox, she believes Dick and Octavia now enlist the help of George Pearls to rob Jenny Merrill. Everything goes completely haywire, and Jenny ends up getting killed. What was supposed to be a robbery ends up as a murder. George Pearls leaves town as quickly as possible and is picked up by police in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, where he is not cooperative and is shot 6 times and dies. Emily Burns was implicated in the murder because she had happened to go for a walk with Pearls the night the murder happened. When she learned Pearls was planning to rob Jenny, she tried to leave. Pearls threatened to kill her if she did. So she was at the scene of the murder and now was the only person left to try for the murder. Emily Burns was found guilty less than 24 hours after her trial and sent to Parchman Farms, the Mississippi State Penitentiary. Now, I'd like to highlight 2 themes from our course that this book encompasses. First is empathy. In the beginning of our course, Dr. Michelle urged us as historians to find empathy for the people and the time that we are studying. Finding empathy for Dick Dana and Octavia Dockery has been hard. For me, it was a little bit easier to find empathy for Dick Dana, since he was clinically diagnosed as mentally incompetent, and he wasn't in his right mind. Octavia, on the other hand, she knew exactly what she was doing. She was manipulative, she was cunning, she was calculating, and liked all the attention she was getting. Even though she was poor and she was living in squalor, finding empathy for her has been a challenge. Another theme I'd like to highlight is what it was like for African Americans living in the Jim Crow South. There was a stark difference between the experience Dick and Octavia had in jail versus the experience Emily Burns had in jail. It's a complete double standard of justice. For Dick and Octavia, even though their fingerprints were found at the murder scene, a few days after their arrest, the judge let them go home on their own recognizance, like I mentioned before. While they were in jail, they had several attorneys from the local area volunteer to represent them. While they were there, they had people come visit them, bringing them food and flowers and even blankets. And after they were released and went home, Dick and Octavia opened up the goat castle for tours, for a price, of course. They began to make a profit off of their experience. The two also went on tour themselves. Dick would play the piano and Octavia would retell stories of the Old South. The murder actually became a footnote. The story was about these two eccentrics living in their falling down antebellum mansion with their animals. Now, Emily's experience in prison, in jail, on the other hand, even though her fingerprints weren't found anywhere, her and her mother were kept in that jail for 4 months without an attorney. Emily's attorney was finally appointed 1 week before her trial. There were no volunteers there. And speaking of fingerprints, the fingerprint evidence collected on Dick Dana and Octavia Dockery was never used in trial. It was never even discussed. While Emily was in jail, she was bullied by officers while being questioned. A whip was placed on the table before her while she was being questioned, and she was urged and coerced to tell the truth or else. Emily was found guilty less than 24 hours after her trial was over. Now, she could have received the death penalty as a sentence, but the jury in the case, which consisted of 12 white men, they didn't even believe that she committed the murder. But they knew the white people of Natchez wanted justice, and Emily just happened to be the scapegoat. Another theme that we could discuss here is that of gender. If Emily would have been a male in this same situation, the chances of her being lynched were very high. Since she was a woman, she was protected while she was in jail, and she was given a trial. Now for the significance of this book. The media and even historians have made this story about the eccentrics, Dick and Octavia. The real story, in my opinion, was about the Jim Crow justice, or injustice in this case. The decline and decay of the Old South, and what happened to descendants of the planter class and of slaves. The other significant thing about this book, in my opinion, the most significant thing, is that Emily Burns had been forgotten. And now, with this book, she had been found. Her story has been told. She was an easy target for white Mississippi to put in jail as justice for Jenny Merrill's murder. And now we know Emily's side of the story. A great addition to her story is now we also have a photograph of Emily. And it's not a mugshot taken from the prison, or not a photograph of her working at Parchman Farms, but a photograph with her and her family. This photograph was given to Karen Cox as she visited with Emily's family, and after she had gained their trust is when they had presented this picture to her, is what I'm guessing happened. In my opinion, this makes Karen Cox's work as a historian worth every effort.